Hey, everybody. By now, you've definitely heard that Hollywood is essentially under attack. And when I say that, I don't mean in a military sense, I mean economically. Netflix has put in a disgustingly high billion-dollar bid for Warner Brothers, and Paramount has now stepped in with what's being called an adversarial bid or something like that to counter the Netflix bid. Everyone is up in arms about what this means for the future of films, the future of movies, and the future of cinema itself. If you want a really good rundown of where we stand today, The Critical Drinker has an excellent video essay that covers all of that beautifully. Definitely go watch that. But there's one thing that he doesn't cover, and I think it's the thing we should actually be the most concerned about. It's easy to talk about the changing cinema experience, the cost of going to the theater, or the people who sometimes ruin the theater experience all around you. All of those things definitely true. And it's also true that so many films head to streaming way too quickly and that the theater window just barely has any meaning anymore. But here's the part that nobody is addressing. If you spent any amount of time watching television on streaming platforms, you know exactly what happens. Series today often just rewrite the same season over and over in slightly different ways. It's cable television storytelling just packaged inside Netflix, Disney, Apple TV, Crunchyroll, or whatever you want to watch, wherever your shows are. The cinema gave us something different. It gave us a public space where everyone saw the same story, talked about it, and then tried to figure out, was it good? Was it bad? Did they write it well? Did they do a good job directing it and producing it? Did the actors deliver? By the end of the opening weekend, you knew exactly how audiences felt because it showed up in the box office. And there was no way to hide a flop. There was also no way to fake a surprise hit that suddenly captured everyone's attention and made more money than anyone expected because it shows up in the books. Streaming breaks that system. There was a point early in streaming when the writing felt fresh compared to cable television or network television, really, but it wasn't better than what you'd see in the theaters. Streaming just looked superior because cable had gotten stale, network TV had gotten boring. Now we're watching what happens when streaming becomes the industry. You get the lowest common denominator storytelling. Writing quality drops, production quality drops, everything drops. Look at some of the biggest shows we've had: Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, several of the Star Wars series. They're hit or miss because they're all being produced with streaming in mind. Studios are churning out so much content. They're filming and producing things before the scripts are even finished and or fully vetted. Stories aren't thought through completely like a movie is. Cast members outgrow their roles when things aren't strategically planned out in a regular pattern. You end up watching the same season three times under different titles. Producers get tired and rush to the end, leaving the audience feeling that the finale kind of feels like being run off to a shotgun marriage only to be abandoned by the side of the road afterwards, wondering what just happened. It breaks trust. And once you lose trust in the quality of the production, you can't get it back easily. Just ask Disney. If you're interested in the political side of this, Brett Cooper actually does a really good video from that angle. And while she's a conservative commentator, she kind of brings that conservative perspective to her video, but she does a really solid job of laying out how people on both sides, the right and the left, are reacting to this merger. What she points out, and what I think is really worth paying attention to, is that Netflix tends to produce more liberal leaning content, while Warner Brothers historically produced everything, conservative stories, liberal stories, apolitical stories, and everything in between. She makes a really strong argument that if Netflix becomes the parent studio, the diversity of content could be dramatically reduced. And I find the irony of that statement just shocking to me. We've already seen what happened with Star Wars and the MCU when Disney bought those IPs and shifted their storytelling toward targeted narratives. And Disney has been struggling with that because our country isn't one demographic. It's a wide spectrum from the right to the left and all of the people in between, like the centrists, as well as the people on the fringe. We need storytelling that crosses that spectrum. If Netflix begins imposing its own storytelling philosophies and guardrails on Warner's future content, we could see fewer stories for conservative audiences who prefer topics in that vein, or at least apolitical topics or non liberal focused topics with messages. And whether you're into the whole message idea or I've kind of had it with the whole message business. But when one company owns everything and takes over the production of storytelling that is going to impact more than 50% of the stories that are produced for us, whether on streaming or cable or whatever, that is a problem. And that's an issue that we all have to think about because even apolitical storytelling is somehow now up for debate in this. And Brett's video is worth watching if you want to understand how this merger could reshape the cultural side of Hollywood's output. And if you look at movies produced directly for streaming, very few feel like they were made for the cinema. The biggest exception to the rule might be Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. Netflix handled that one differently by putting it in theaters 2 to 3 weeks before it hit streaming because they knew it was built for the cinema experience. It was beautiful. It was a spectacle. It had a great story. The other major place where streaming and cinema meet beautifully is anime. Demon Slayer, Infinity Castle, Chainsaw Man, and Jujutsu Kaisen Execution are perfect examples of this. Anime is thriving in theaters as a spectacle to bring audiences back to streaming and to expand their fan base. It's genius, and they're pulling it off beautifully. But Western studios, not so much. They're getting caught up here. Once Disney purchased the MCU and Star Wars, we saw the shift. The quality declined while the content increased. And Netflix is now in that same place. Anyone subscribed to Netflix knows this. You see the same things over and over. Their interface gives you such a narrow window into their catalog that you can scroll for 10 minutes and still find nothing new unless you already know the title that you're looking for. And it's just so hard to discover anything new on their platform, even with their algorithm directing things to you. They can buy every catalog in existence, but until they find a way to deliver it in a useful, intuitive way, the acquisition kind of means nothing. The algorithm shows you things like what you've already watched, which is the problem. Just like hearing the same type of music over and over, you eventually get starved for something original, something new, something different. If Netflix doesn't solve this, the merger is going to clobber them. There's another layer that we haven't talked about, though: subscriptions. Sure, you can get all of these streaming services at home now. Maybe you can get all these movies through streaming services, but how many channels do you have right now? And how many of those did Netflix just acquire from Warner Brothers and their catalog? Does that mean you now only need Netflix and you get everything? Or will Netflix now require you to do add-on subscriptions to access things like HBO, TMC, Paramount Plus, all of those things? Will they get folded into Netflix? And then you'll have to pay piecemeal to access each one individually. Kind of sounds like network television and cable. Will Netflix become the equivalent of Comcast or RCN or whatever cable service you use? You know what? People really need to think about this because they should be up in arms about it. Because the next logical move for Netflix is to secure a distribution network, meaning internet access, and pull streaming completely out of the cable's ecosystem. This is a multi legged nightmare with potential conflicts everywhere. And honestly, I don't know how Netflix can make the money it needs with its current subscription prices. What happens when a company controls all the content, all the distribution, and all the access? Prices, they go up, consumers lose choice, and we could end up paying more without even realizing it. I think people need to be very careful about celebrating the consolidation of streaming under one roof. Yes, prices might go down, convenience might go up. We might be able to combine everything together, seemingly so, but history suggests otherwise. No corporation has your best interests at heart. They have profit, dominance, and market control at heart. They have their shareholders at heart. Whether this means the end of Hollywood or just the evolution of Hollywood, it just remains to be seen. But the movies, I think they'll decline significantly. This might actually be the moment when AR, VR headsets become the new home for spectacle. That is kind of a weird kind of tangent of all of this. People who crave that bigger than life, that amazing experience that sweeps you away if the cinemas are no longer there, they want to experience those 2 hour immersions into a movie that you get when you go to the theater. But now, maybe these immersive devices, these headsets that people are not quite able to afford, maybe they will be able to afford them now. Theaters, they made cinema accessible for everyone, whether you had cable, network TV, or streaming subscriptions and you could only pay $15 and walk in and see a theater movie. That is going to be changing if this all goes through, and it's going to be changing in a significant way. If you want the full picture of the Warner Brothers Netflix situation, go watch Critical Drinker's video and definitely check out Brett Cooper's video as well. The two stories there that they are both telling come together nicely. And I think with my addition here, you get a really full picture of what we are looking at. It gives you a solid perspective on where things stand and what this could mean for Hollywood. Thanks for being here, everybody. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and share it with a friend so that they know what's going on. And let me know what you think. What does this mean for you? What do you think it'll mean for the movie industry as a whole? And while you're here, hey, why not check out one of these reviews and see what other movies you might want to watch? All right, I'll see y'all again soon. Until then, happy viewing. Bye for now.